Hi, we're sisters Elaine and Brenda.
Welcome to the Body Wealth Podcast, a space for conversation about the wealth that really matters.
Your best health. We are so disappointed that due to technical difficulties, the recording of the first part of our conversation with Yetti was lost. However, in the recording we were able to salvage, Yetti shares valuable information on an important topic, bipolar disorder. Listeners should be warned that there's a brief mention of suicidal thoughts in this conversation. If you prefer not to hear that discussion, please skip this episode.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yetti, and I'm so grateful to have been a guest on the Body Wealth podcast. I got a chance to discuss my experience with mental health as well as some other aspects in my life. So I'm really excited for the episode to come out, and I'm excited for everyone else to hear it as well.
Yetti is the daughter of Nigerian immigrants. She was born and raised in Oklahoma, but her childhood was filled with challenges. Her mother was rarely home, working long hours, juggling multiple jobs and enterprises. Yetti was given responsibility for much of the care for her little sister, who was nonverbal and diagnosed with autism spectrum. During her freshman year of college, Yetti's mother died. The family's outstanding debt led to a brief period during which Yetti experienced homelessness.
We pick up our conversation when she describes how she navigated college and then discovered her bipolar diagnosis.
I just remember constantly feeling like in a state of survival, constantly worried about having enough money, constantly worried about having food to eat. I remember especially at first year, like just having so many emotions and one being shame, like having shame of not having enough money to pay rent and trying to save money to eat. And this is like before I found out about food stamps and stuff. So I had a little call center job on campus that was like $7 an hour. And I remember like paying my phone bill and then paying for gas and literally from my paycheck having $50 and being scared and like being ashamed of asking.
Did you share this
For
with
food.
your friends at all? Did you have anyone who you were able to share?
It took some months. It's some months before I could share it. Just because, yeah, I just wanted like a normal college experience and didn't want to share how much I was struggling because I just wanted to feel, normal.
You
and
wanted
so,
people
yeah,
to
I
look
feel
at you
like,
as normal.
yes, yeah. And so I definitely, at the time, I dealt with a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. I remember feeling, I would definitely say that's when I started developing these intense anger outbursts. I also started developing, I won't say like psychosis, but I definitely would have moments where I felt like people were plotting against me. And like, I didn't know what, at this time, I didn't know what was going on, right? I just remember trying to just get through each semester, get through each week, do well in my classes so that I can move on to the next class and graduate somewhat close to the same year that my peers graduated. Around this time is when I started going to therapy. So, multicultural engineering department, the ladies who ran that, they encouraged me to go because another thing that I was doing around this time, and I didn't even realize that my friends told me about this, like me doing this. I would say things like, oh, if like a car came and hit me, I would be okay with that. Or like if, my car stalled on the train tracks, I would be okay with that. In my mind at the time, that seemed like a logical thing to say. I wasn't alarmed by saying that because that's how I felt. But everybody
They were
else
alarmed.
was
Good.
alarmed.
Good.
Yes.
And took
And
action.
yeah. And so they told me to go see the counselor at the school. And that's when I, told her what was going on in my life at the time. And Yeah, I told her, like, yeah, I don't really have like a drive to live, you know. I'm just doing what everyone else doing right now, going to class, work. And she asked me like how I felt. I was like, I just feel constantly under anxiety. Like I just feel like I feel like something else is happening or something's gonna get taken. And I like,
Just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
yes. And so that's when she was like, I want you to go to the school psychologist, and I want you to talk to him, and he prescribed medication for anxiety and depression. And so I will say, sure, once I started taking that medication, and I remember being paranoid about it, because for one, the stigma obviously of taking medication, like I still cared about that, but also I was just like, I don't want this to make me sick. I started getting really paranoid about health stuff after my mom passed.
Right.
And so I asked them to basically give me the lowest dose, which was 20 milligrams. And so I remember after I started taking that, I actually was able to like reach an emotional state to where I could go to class, focus on the class. You know, afterwards I could decompress a little bit, then go to my next class, focus on the class. And I didn't feel like something was always gonna happen.
The medicine helped.
It helped me, yeah. It
And
helps.
with all the stress that you were under, I'm sure there had to be an emotional effect. But did you also
Mhm.
get therapy in addition to the medicine?
Yes, yes. I had continued therapy. That definitely helped a lot, especially when it came to, like, sharing my thoughts of, like, uh, trigger warning, I guess, being suicidal
Thank you.
and talking to my therapist about that at the time. Um, and she was this older Black woman, so it really was like, having that at a predominantly white school, for one, it was just it was really nice to have that at the time. And so I remember feeling so much better being able to talk to someone about it, you know, versus if I talked to my friends or everybody else, they were freaked out by it.
Yeah.
And there was a time where I was on like a accountability plan
Mhm.
because the therapist was worried about me. So she said, okay, I need the phone number of your two closest friends. And I need to be in contact with them, and I need to reach out to them so that they make sure that you're good, because they would about me. Like it's like a scale from 1 to 10 or something, and I think I was like a 7 or 8.
Right.
And so,
So,
um,
well, that is great that you
yeah,
had that support.
Yeah.
Because you needed the
yeah,
professional support, but then this professional
mhm,
support needed to be complemented by the
mhm,
community, right? Your
yeah,
trusted community. And so that's really great that they were working together.
yes, yeah. I didn't realize like all of the things that I needed at the time, and I'm so glad for friends, just even knowing how to access those things and, you know, encourage me to do those things, because I don't know where I would be, you know, like I probably really would have lost my mind. Like I was very close to, just from the emotional stress of everything at the time. Um, and so, yeah, that's how I managed through all of college. I continued therapy. So that first therapist, she ended up leaving
Mm.
the school, but I continued therapy throughout college, especially because as a student, the therapy was really cheap. So I just tried to take advantage of that. It kind of went from like grief therapy to just like maintenance of my mental and myself. Cause yeah, it was hard. Like college was hard. Um,
It's
and
hard for everybody, but when you're having those other factors, I can't even imagine. I mean, I hate that you had to be
yeah,
that strong, but you were. It's a testament to your own determination and your own ability to figure it out. And kudos to you, but
yeah,
I am so sorry that you had to do that.
And I'm so glad you're on
yeah,
the other side of that. So
Yes,
How
yeah.
did you get to a place where you were able to graduate college with an engineering degree?
Right. The first couple years of just kind of being in this state of just survival mode, I really got into a really good routine of just knowing what I needed to do to be successful the next year and then the next year. So it was like, okay, get yourself a work schedule that you can do in between your classes. So I would go to class in the morning, and then I would go to my first job, which was on campus. Then after that, I would go to class at night at a different college. I was trying to like make up classes from the year that I failed. So then I would go to class at night at a different college. Then I would finish my evenings working retail or closing out retail. There was a lot of community that really helped and rallied around me once I stopped feeling, I think, so ashamed too.
Mm.
Uh,
No, it's
so
true. We
that
have to
was
share. And some people will make you feel more shame, but if you continue to share, you're going to find the people that are there to help you. And I'm so glad that
yes,
you did.
yeah.
And then once
Yeah.
you got out of school, how did you maintain? Because you didn't have that same routine, so you had to figure out another
Yeah,
way.
I was kind of freaking out. I didn't know what I was gonna be doing with the time that I had outside of work. So I enrolled at grad school for the next year and a half because I did the accelerated program. I think part of me was very much in this like consistent, I have to go, go, go mode. But I think also at the time, that's when I was starting to manifest a lot of these traits that I had seen in my mom about working, like constantly doing
Mhm.
things nonstop. And so after I finished grad school, that's when I applied for a job in California, moved from Oklahoma to California. That is when I started to get out of like this intense survival mode. And I started to realize that I had a lot of, I won't say bad habits, but like there were a lot of things that I had ignored when I was in school that were really affecting me at the time. So when I was saying earlier about like that psychosis or like that paranoia, started experiencing that a lot, like thinking people were plotting against me or like my friends were plotting against me. Like I didn't know, it was kind of like I didn't have authority over my own decisions.
Oh, so you might
And
do
so
things that you didn't really want to do.
yeah, I would do some very like intense things. Like, I don't even want to say, but I
Yeah,
would
that's
do this.
amazing.
I would have these bouts of like time periods where I would just do these intense things. And
Would you be
I
aware when you
didn't
were doing
know.
them, or would you be then looking back and saying, "Oh, I did this thing that I
Mhm.
really wish I didn't do"?
It would be the look back for sure.
Oh,
And then it would be how I felt during that look back.
Okay.
It would be like I would have these moments of like this intense behavior, and I would feel so like elated during that behavior. But whenever I would hit this like dip, I just feel like suicidal, or I would start to have like that paranoia that people are plotting against me.
so when you
And
recognize that, what did you do?
so this was like during the pandemic. I remember one day just feeling like don't feel okay. Something's wrong with me. So I got online, literally pulled out my laptop, got online, logged on to psychologytoday.com and typed in like uh feelings of intense depression, feelings of paranoia, excessive behaviors like excessive drinking. All of these therapists came up basically. And I remember so badly being like, I need a Black woman therapist. Like, that's what I need. If it's not that, I don't want it. I remember reaching out to like 4 or 5, and they were either booked up, they didn't respond, or they weren't taking new clients. And I just remember being like so distraught by that. And probably for a month, I was just like maybe nothing's wrong with me. Like, I remember calling one that will have an opening in 2 months. I remember trying to wait on that. That's when I started to get those thoughts of like, aren't you're just tired of this? Like, you're just tired. Like, what's the point of even being here? So that's when I got back into psychology thing. And there was one therapist on there that I had seen, but I skipped over her because she wasn't Black. And I reached out to her, and she was still a woman of color, but I was just like, okay, let me reach out to her and just tell her what I've been experiencing. And could you not, within 30 minutes, she emailed me back and she said, let's get you an intake call tomorrow. And I just remember being so like relieved by that. I got on the intake call with her. It went very well. Then we had another meeting that went well. And then the third meeting is when I had taken the tests that she gave me, because she wasn't only a therapist, she can also diagnose and she can also treat. And so I did the testing. So I remember when I'm with her, I was like, I think I might have borderline personality disorder. Like, I don't feel like I'm in charge of my life. I feel like I can make decisions, and those decisions, in hindsight aren't good. I have days where I don't sleep. And, I'm telling her all this, but then by the third session, I take the tests and she comes back to me in the fourth session and she's like, you don't have borderline personality disorder, but I think you are bipolar. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, what does that mean? And she was like, have time periods or moments where you experience mania, and that mania is accompanied by heightened energy, high behavior, excessive behavior. It's kind of like you're pressing the gas pedal and you can't stop. And then she said it's followed by a dip, which usually is a deep depressive dip that is accompanied with suicidal thoughts, paranoia, psychosis. And I was like, oh, okay. I remember her saying this, and I remember feeling so relieved.
So you recognized it in what she said, and then you're like, okay, if we can name this, maybe we can do something about it to make me feel better. Yes.
And I just remember for a long time, even in college, and I remember already feeling like, oh, I have depression. I just need to get better at controlling emotions. Like, I remember thinking that, like, why am I not as emotionally strong as other people? Like, despite everything I'd gone through, I still felt that I should have been performing at the same level and capacity emotionally as everybody else. I remember literally having the thought, like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I control my anger, in this situation? Or like, why can't I fall asleep, like after 3 days? Like, what's wrong? What's going on with me? And yeah.
We're so hard on ourselves, but we also don't have that information. So, I mean, there's something wrong and it can be addressed and treated.
And I don't have to fix it myself, right? I'm so glad that you found this therapist.
And that you continue to look, and that you didn't, stop when it wasn't easy, because it's not easy.
So how did she help you?
So she gave me the bipolar diagnosis. And here's another thing too that I think helped me, but necessarily wasn't in my treatment plan. Through those first initial sessions of just talking with her about my mom's behaviors, I remember her telling me, like, in the same session that she diagnosed me, I think your mom was bipolar 1. And she had actually diagnosed me as bipolar 2 because I would go through these like rapid cycles within like 2-week periods. But she said, I think your mom was bipolar 1. And then it wasn't until she said that it made sense, because yeah, she was a workaholic. I mean, she would come home at 3 a.m., literally sleep, wake up, and be gone at 6 a.m. Like, I remember her doing these things. I remember her not coming to basketball games or band concerts because she had to work. Literally, this is what she would tell me. And I remember her, constantly buying businesses or starting businesses And I'm 13, 14 being like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't
What
understand
what
what's
is
going on.
bipolar 1? I mean, you've described bipolar 2,
Yeah.
but what is its
Yes.
difference?
Yeah. So bipolar 1 is similar to bipolar 2, it's longer periods of time. So you could experience mania for months at a time and not even realize that you're in mania. Versus bipolar 2, I might have 3, 4, 5 days like that. And then something triggers, or I literally fall, and then I just completely slow down, or I regain like a stable thought process, you know. And I'm like, oh, well, I spent a lot of money this week. Like, I need to run in. With bipolar 1, you don't necessarily have that ability. My therapist, she said, I think your mom was just untreated and she was just manic for years, basically. She's just cycling month after month.
How
And
exhausting for her.
Yeah.
So her serial
And
entrepreneurship was actually a symptom of the bipolar, potentially.
yeah. And I also think her spending, whatever she was spending on was that kind of excessive, that one of the excessive that comes with being mania. She also would have these intense outbursts, like these intense angry outbursts. I didn't realize how not normal that was. Like having a parent who like is not there, real like she was there, of course, and she loved us. I didn't feel unloved, but like she definitely put work first. Like that was her thing. I didn't realize like that wasn't normal, or having a parent who has like 10 businesses that she's trying to run by herself. And the people that help her are her kids. You know, like,
How did you feel, though? I mean,
you
I
know,
feel like you recognize that when your therapist said that she had bipolar 1 and she may have had it. How did that change the way you felt or you thought about your mother?
I felt bad, I think. I felt sorry for her, my mom. I just wonder how life would have been had maybe, she gone to therapy, or even way back when she was in her 30s, had she like allowed herself to get help. Like my mom didn't ask for help ever from anyone, like not mental help, financial help. She didn't do these things. And I think that's why she was in so much debt, because she just was trying to pull herself out of debt, just get herself into more debt. Felt sad for myself, because I wish I would have known my mom as an adult, and as I wish I would have got the experience when she wasn't manic.
Did it scare you to hear that diagnosis for your mom pretty much at the same time you're hearing it, a similar diagnosis for yourself?
I had relief in having the diagnosis, but I was scared because I didn't want to end up like my mom. I didn't want to end up like her. I'm much more comfortable now, but at the time, I remember being like, oh my God, I already have anxiety and depression. Like, what are people going to think of this? That's why it took me about a year before I start medication for it.
Oh, so you didn't start treatment for a year?
And did the therapist want you to, or say that it was something that might help you?
Did. Yeah. She was encouraging me to do it because she can't tell me what to do.
Right.
But she was like, I really want you to at least try it. You don't have to start at a high dose, start at a low dose. I want you to see how it affects you. I thought being in therapy was enough to emotionally train myself. And by this time too, I had cut the medication that I was taking for anxiety and depression, like cutting from 20 milligrams to 10.
So when and how did you decide to start taking the medication to treat the bipolar then?
I'd probably say maybe like after 6 months of seeing her, that's when I started being like, okay, maybe I should consider taking this, because I would still experience some of the things that I was experiencing. The difference was that going to therapy with her allowed me to better recognize, oh, I think I'm hypomanic right now.
Even without taking medicine, if you felt like you were going into that, is there something that you did that could help you to counteract it?
I would do like a lot of grounding techniques and exercises. So I would try to make myself present in the moment. So I would like lifting my hands up, dropping them to my side every 5 seconds. I would list out 5 different colors that I would see. But you can only do so much of that, in your day. That's when I realized, like, okay, maybe I should try medication because, like, I remember telling myself, like, I feel crazy. Like, I feel crazy. That's all I can describe it as is like feeling unhinged, like just partaking in terrible not okay, it's not that terrible, but
Right. Yeah.
the excess, like when I'm on this high of just like euphoria in my manic state, and then I hit that dip and I'm suicidal the next day, like intensity of it was just too much.
So did the medication work immediately or start to work for you? Okay.
She told me it would take about 3 weeks, so she was very much like, "Please don't stop taking it, like, take it every day for 3 weeks. It needs to build up in your system." And I remember the day that it started working, literally, I remember the moment it started. One of my line sisters called me, and before, whenever people would call me, I instantly into, like, this panic mode and be like, "What are they calling me about? Like, what's going on? What are they calling me about?" And I would just, like, not wanna answer the phone. And so this day, she called me, and that was the first time I had space in between my reaction and my thought
Ah.
to be like, "Oh, let me pick up the phone and answer. She's probably just calling to say hi." And I remember reflecting on that reaction and being like, "I've never felt that way before." It's like I had space in between my reaction and what was actually happening, and that's when I was like, I'm not gonna stop taking it."
Powerful. What a
Yeah.
relief to be able to
Yes.
take a pause between your reaction and your action so that you can make a
Mhm.
better decision. That is
Yes, yeah,
fantastic. So how are
yeah.
you doing now?
So, I think I'm doing great now. I think that especially financially in my life, like, I'm at a point where I'm not affected financially in the same way I was in my 20s. Mentally, I feel so much just keenly aware of my behaviors and thoughts. Not saying that I don't experience hypomania, I definitely still do, but the intensity of it, it's not as devastating as it was. Um, I also feel like I've developed an awareness of what my triggers could be and how to manage them. So if I have a stressful work day and I have to stay up late to do work or something, I'm aware that that can be a trigger for my mania. Because if I stay up past a certain time, then I could be awake for like 4 days, right? So one thing that I would do was literally take my phone to another room and kind of read myself to sleep or like force myself into a bedtime so that I don't trigger this manic episode. So I feel like now, yeah, I have so many more tools to deal with bipolar 2 disorder. And I also, I set boundaries for myself too. Like whenever I do experience hypomania and it's related to spending or finances,
Mhm.
I try to set alerts on my like bank account and things like that to be like, hey, you're actually doing too much right now this month. Like you need to chill out. And so that kind of knocks me back into like a a a balanced state of being like, okay, calm down, readjust, redo what you're doing, and then, kind of take myself out of this hypomanic phase.
So
But
putting boundaries.
yeah, I feel much better. I feel
Oh, I'm so happy.
I feel like I know what's going on, with myself. Uh, and I did not have that before. And I remember one of my line sisters, she was one of the first ones that I told. I was like, "Yeah, I got diagnosed with bipolar 2." And she was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "I mean, honestly, I knew something was wrong all along because when we lived together in college, I didn't want to make you mad. I wouldn't bring attention to it. I'm very grateful. I couldn't see myself here. 10 years ago, I had no idea what life would look like, you know? I'm grateful to be here.
It's a good reminder that there are seasons in life for all of us, and with the help of a great community and family, and with attention to what we need for our own health, we can get through those seasons that seem like they're impossible to get through, and get to a place where you have some joy and happiness in your life and you feel good.
I'm glad that you have gotten yourself to a good place. I just want to ask one quick question before we go to our final questions. Once you got the diagnosis, initially you said you felt relieved to know what it was, but also a little bit hesitant or embarrassed to share that diagnosis with friends. But you sharing your story is going to be so helpful to other people who may be feeling like, what's wrong with me? What's going on with me? And need to get a little inspiration to get some help. So what was it that allowed you to be able to share your diagnosis with your friends and family?
Maybe because I was turning 30 at the time, or like I'm 30 now, but like I think I was just tired of like feeling like I had to have shame around it. You know, people talk about the time, like stigma's really still there. You know, even when people casually talk, they'll be like, "Oh, the weather's bipolar today," or like, "Why are you acting so bipolar?" And it's like, if only you. But you know, just remembering how I felt. I don't want someone else to feel that way. Even now, I'll still tell my therapist, like, maybe nothing is with me and I'm just dramatic. You know, that's how I feel at times, you know, but like, I don't want someone else to think that and then suffer more when there probably is an answer for them out there.
Everybody's got something, as Robin Roberts says, and that, the world needs to be a more accepting place for all of us because we are who we are.
And we have gifts
And
to give.
Yeah.
right, we have gifts, we have struggles, and the best thing is for us to support each other and accept each other. But accepting yourself first is the biggest gift.
Well, we're so happy you're well, Yetti, and just keep on taking care of yourself. We do have two final questions that we like to ask guests before we go.
How do you think being a Black woman affected your experience?
For me, that's where a lot of my own resistance was coming from because it was like, I don't need to seem like I need help. I don't want to seem like I need help with this or that.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So even, yeah, in undergrad, it took me a while to ask for help because I didn't want to seem
Like you weren't as strong or as smart or as anything as anybody else, right?
Right. Yeah.
What would you need from a healthcare provider to feel well cared for?
I would say the checking in, I guess, you know, like my therapist, I see my therapist every week. That's like as normal as drinking water. If every Black woman who had a primary care doctor, if there was a therapist who maybe they weren't seeing, but someone who would check in with them, how's your mental this week? You know, how are you feeling? How's your energy? How are your habits? Like for me, the mental, that's what has helped me. Just having someone there, you know, asking the questions, that has helped tremendously. Because until I had that, I just thought I was being dramatic. You know, I just thought I was dramatic and I needed to work on my emotional intelligence, you know? So that's what I would say.
You question yourself enough. You don't need somebody else questioning
Right.
your feelings and your thoughts.
Well, it's so good to see you in the place that you are today. Your 30s are going to be a wonderful decade. Keep taking care of yourself. And thank you for being on the
Thank
Body Work
you.
podcast.
Yeah, so good to see you.
Thanks for listening. Want to hear our take on this conversation? check out our After the Show episode right here. For resources related to today's topic, see the show notes.
If you want to support Body Wealth, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. We'd also love it if you give us a 5-star rating and write a review letting us know what you love about the show.
The Body Wealth podcast shares personal stories to inspire you. It does not constitute medical advice. For that, we encourage you to work with a trusted healthcare provider. We also want to remind you that the views expressed by our guests are their own.
This podcast is dedicated to our mother, Jean Fernandez Barbour, who showed us what advocating for yourself really looks like.